Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel. Thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the international network or parts of the international networks of NGOs. Now, I was looking at a list of NGOs operating. This is just in Western Europe, by the way, and it's by no means an exhaustive list. It's just the top 15. By the number of employees and by the funding that they receive. Now, the funding just with these top 15 is pushing $2 billion, but it's a little bit difficult to nail down exactly how much money they're getting and spending and how much is sort of contra deals with other agencies such as the United Nations and such as various other charitable groups that purport to be engaging in charitable work, but put a very sizable portion of that money into other work. So you might have the United Nations, for example, might be supplying all the personnel and all the motor vehicles and all the transport infrastructure. The United Nations may be supplying that, but they may be doing it under a, feeding the hungry children in Africa or something like that. So they may have a charitable cause sort of out front, but their infrastructure is being given to or loaned to these various NGOs. So the NGO may say, well, we only got $10 million last year. We didn't, but everything that they do is paid for by the United Nations through some other backdoor or through some other, I would call, fraudulent scheme. So it's very difficult to actually work out who's paying for what and what the money is being spent on. Where the money might come from, that's slightly different. But if, for example, the United Nations, or it could be something, for example, the United Nations, they've got 200 four-wheel drive vehicles, for example. So all the upkeep, the cost, the drivers, the fuel, the maintenance, all that's paid for by the United Nations, but made fully available to an NGO to use to ferry illegal aliens around the place, or to move food and water and various other infrastructures needed to convey vast numbers of illegal aliens from Africa or elsewhere around Asia, for example, into the West. The trick that they tend to do is they'll send the UN or the NGOs, they'll send agitators around to all the the rural villages in Africa or Bangladesh or somewhere, and they'll say, look, you can go to remember, these are illiterate peasants with an IQ of 70. They can't even conceive something that's over the end of the horizon. So this idea that they, what, I want a better life in the West, I think I'll go. No, that doesn't happen. That's some bullshit propaganda they put out. The reality is these peasants have never been out of the village. They can't even conceptualize what it's like beyond the horizon, but suddenly they just jump up and make a 5,000-mile journey or a 10,000-mile journey. No, they don't. So they spend special agitators around to the villages, and then they say, look, we'll pay for everything, your food, your water, your clothing. We'll get you to we'll get you into the West. Now, they may get dumped, say, on the Mediterranean shore of North Africa, and they maybe have to cough some cash to a people smuggler or something like that. But the majority of those folks that are moving around within the NGO network are given point-to-point coverage. They're taken from the village and conveyed to thousands of miles into the West, and all that infrastructure is paid for. So there's a bit of a round robin of use of resources. For example, at the way stations where these illegal aliens sort of stopping on the way to the West, who pays for all the food and clothing? There aren't laundry facilities there, so if their clothes become too much, they're just given a brand new set of clothes. Who's paying for that? Even the people that are there handing out the food. The illegal aliens that are hanging around on the French coast waiting to go to Britain, for example, across the English Channel. Some of them are there for 2 or 3 years. Now, who's paying for their shelter, their food, their water? Who's paying for all those latrine facilities that are there? Now, the money can sometimes take a circuitous route. For example, the French government or the British government or a Western government may make a donation to some legitimate sounding cause. We help dying little babies. So who's against dying little babies? So that money is then given to and then it's sub-distributed out to. Well, we're only supplying meals to dying hungry little babies, but they're not. They're actually supplying food and meals to these illegal aliens that are hanging around the French coast. Now, how much would those illegal aliens stay there on the French coast for months, years in some cases? Would they stay there if they weren't getting everything provided? All their clothing, the food, the water, everything is provided for them free of charge. Mobile phones are given to them free of charge by the NGOs. So the entire infrastructure of upkeep necessary for their tents, the stoves to cook food on, the heaters in winter, this is all paid for by the NGOs. Ultimately, your tax dollars, by the way, but. So but if they didn't have that infrastructure, they just wouldn't stay. They couldn't stay. They'd starve. They'd have to go back to their countries of origin. Now, these NGOs know full well that these illegals have travelled through 7 or 8 countries to get to France or to get to England or the West. And so they know that these people are all illegal, and yet they aid and abet this illegality. But they're not just aiding and abetting, they're encouraging it. They're facilitating, they've created that people movement infrastructure. So the top 15 NGOs in Western Europe, all of them are receiving multiple government grants from, whether it be from Germany or Britain or France or all three. All the governments that are, globalist controlled governments in Western Europe, which is nearly all of them, are handing out generous amounts. Then there's the United Nations amounts. Then there's private donations that come from the George Soros type groups. And again, sometimes the money bounces around into various front organizations. And then on top of that, you get, as I mentioned earlier, the infrastructure provision. So that who pays for the showers and the latrines for these illegals in France? Well, that's paid for by a group that's supposedly, a charity that's supposedly looking after, again, homeless children in France or somewhere in Europe. They then hire these latrines and various facilities from another group on a very cozy deal. And typically, to keep everyone quiet and sweet, they're paying well above the cap. There's no competitive bidding process or anything like that. If you could hire a latrine for example, for $10 a day, which includes removal of effluent, if you could hire it for $10 a day, they're paying $30 a day. So there's no good value thing going here. This is effectively a huge money laundering scam that's going on using your tax payment. Now, all these NGOs have charity status, which means they're not being taxed, and also the standard of reporting, as in accounting and financial reporting, that they are required to provide, given they're a charity, or falsely declared a charity, then that standard of financial reporting is much lower than if they were a taxable entity. So the money can be, I would argue, the money can and is laundered and hidden in large quantities, and the purpose for which they're supposedly operating, the NGO or the charity, is not what they're actually doing. They're doing backdoor financing of this mass people movement from the third world into the West. Illiterate peasants with an IQ of 70 don't decide to make a 10,000-mile journey, 5,000-mile journey. They just don't. They can't. These are people who've never traveled more than a mile or two away from their village, but suddenly they decide. So this is all an orchestrated thing. So just looking at, I just made a few notes here and I'll refer to them now for these NGOs. Now, of the top 15 NGOs, again, this is Western Europe. It's brazenly and blatantly obvious that they're organised. They are funding the entire infrastructure of illegal mass migration from the third world into the first world, and the only people that are having to pay people smugglers are the ones who haven't come through the proper illegitimate NGO activist globalist network, or they want to jump the queue or something like that. Now, 3 of the 15 are dedicated LGBTQ organisations that are supposedly dedicated to helping LGBTQ people get out of the third world where their lives, are ostensibly or allegedly in danger. But they're the ones who encourage, coach, and advise these illegals on what to say. Now, you have to say that you're a lesbian or you're homosexual, and everyone's out there trying to kill you. The religious authorities are going to throw you off the rooftop. And this is what you have to say. When they ask you this question, you say that, and so on and so forth. And when you get there, if you need a lawyer, here's the lawyer to call. So they're providing the whole, again, the lying, the cheating, the deceiving infrastructure for these people to be able to falsely claim their LGBTQ. But then these organizations, if they were genuinely dedicated to helping gay people from the I don't know how many people are there, and given that the penalties are severe, you can't imagine there's that many. It's not a cool thing for college kids. In these third world countries, they don't have the college system and encourage you to fight back against the man, say you're gay. They don't have all that, say you're trans. So the chances are, if even 1%, or even 1 out of 1,000 was gay or lesbian, I'd be surprised. But nonetheless, if they were genuinely dedicated to rescuing or saving, gay, lesbian people who were genuinely so, and get them out of a dangerous situation, I'd have less concern about it. I may not agree or disagree with any, but at least there would be some sort of honourable and honest purpose to their activities. But this is in my view, this is completely dishonest. They don't care whether someone's gay or not. They're just there to coach people and help them say that they're gay, lesbian, LGBTQ, trans, whatever, say they are, just in order to falsely enter the West. So they're just part of the same, corrupt, fraudulent people pipeline that the others are. 2 are dedicated Jewish shells, Jewish organisation or Jewish funding. What are these? What are the Jewish organisations even there for? Now, if you sort of do some drilling down into their websites and so on, their view, this is the general sort of international Jewish view, that if as long as people anywhere in the world can go anywhere at any time they want for any reason or for no reason, people movement at any time, anywhere, and so on, no borders for people that want to move. Then the argument is this protects the Jewish people from ever having to, go through another Holocaust or sudden eviction from an area or a country or a region or something like that. So they view it from an ideological perspective that complete open borders are somehow a sort of backdoor protection for Jewish people ever being put upon again. So they're in it for those ideological reasons. So they think, well, if the door is wide open for anybody at any time, then we are then also thus protected. But they don't seem to realise, these Jewish activists, that there's maybe a big threat to Jews, as in the evictions and the pods and the or in the Nazi Germany and so on. So this is sure, okay, but at the same time, your biggest protectors for international Jewry are the very Christians that you say are the Hitler's going to come around the corner in the next 5 minutes. You say they're the biggest danger. They're also at the same time, what a dilemma this is for the Jews. But at the same time, they're your biggest protectors, because they have the rule of law, due legal process, or once did anyway, independent courts, all these sorts of things that allow you and other people to come in and live amongst these Gentiles and protect you from the arbitrary type of laws that you're so terrified of. So on one side, the Jews perceive, because the majority of the problem, as they see it, that they have has come. Because the Jews only want to hang out in white Christian Gentile societies, they say, well, all our evictions or all our oppressions have come from these Christian Gentiles. Therefore, they are our biggest enemy. All right, then let's assume that's the case. Why then do you only want to live among Christian Gentiles? The reason you do is because they provide the sort of framework and stable society that other things being equal, and the rule of law that gives you the maximum protection from arbitrary oppression. So if you get rid of these Western Christian Gentile states to protect you from a supposed another Hitler that's only ever 5 minutes away, then you tear down everything else that protects you and supports you. I mean, what will you do then? I mean, really? Now, two more directly funded by the UN, and all of these, of course, are tax-exempt charities, and all receive government handouts. There are various other, I mean, if you break down, there's a couple more say, oh, we're here to help the little children, and we're here to do, but the reality is they do none of those things. All of them are dedicated to illegal aiding and abetting, mass illegality and mass people movement of third world folks into the West, and they're all lavishly funded and unreasonably given charity status. If you break this up, just this international NGO network, which has almost been specifically created for the purpose of destroying Western civilization, if you break it up, cut off their funding, particularly cut off their charity status, the whole thing, I think, or much of it, would come crashing down. We really need to do this. I've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.